Drivers and Danica, start your engines!
Pull those belts down tight one more time. Warm up those tires. Hit your marks and let's go racing, boys and girls. NASCAR, Indycar, Formula One, Formula E, NHRA, and local dirt track and drag strip racing talk. This is the fastest hour in radio.
Where'd you go? Where's your home? How'd you end up all alone? Can you hear me now? Hear me now.
Here's your host, Steve West and Dustin Harmer, with producer John Myers.
Well, you got 2/3 of that at this moment in time. I'm Steve West, and welcome to Memorial Day weekend and the fastest hour in radio. Going to be a 2-hour live edition where you can call in at 941-1011, toll-free, 866-551-9933. Those commercials that you hear that separate us and your house inside and out, they tend to take holiday weekends off like Mother's Day and Memorial Day. Woohoo! So we're going to do 2 hours. That voice you hear over there, that'd be one John Myers. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. Revved up, ready to go.
You got a kid out of high school, I hear.
Ah, finally, yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah, she, I tell you, you never know how old you feel until you watch your kid graduate
I
from high
bet.
school.
I bet.
I feel so old. But, yeah, she walked across the stage or the field and got her diploma last night.
Okay.
I'm really proud of her. Great job, Jillian.
Yep. Congratulations to my niece. Always very happy to see that. This year has been one whacked-out year between you, who I call my brother, because for all intents and purposes you are.
This is true.
You've got a kid graduating high school. Let's see. Church friend has 4 children. One graduated college. The other graduated high school. So the first 2, the oldest is out of college. The second oldest is now out of high school and getting ready to go to college. Let's see. Then one of my wife's best friends, their daughter also graduated college this year. I'm just trying to think. There's probably 8 graduations that I can think of right offhand. If I just started to go down through the list, whether it's high school or college, there's like 8 of them. I'm glad I don't have to give you all gifts because I'm broke.
You be a broke puppy.
That's right. 941-1011, toll-free, 866-551-9933. Somewhere on the road, right around the Georgia-South Carolina border, is one Dustin Harmer. He says he's going to call in.
He will.
We'll find out.
I have faith.
Well, right now you're having more faith than I am because I sent him a text and said call, but yeah, nothing. We may also hear from a person who was on the scene last weekend. Pre-Memorial Day weekend is always the weekend at Charlotte, North Carolina, where they run the Sprint All-Star Race.
The All-Star Race. Oh,
yes.
Joy, happiness.
Which I do want to go see in person at some point in time because I think the spectacle of it is kind of cool.
Yeah, being there in person is a big thing.
Until NASCAR screws up the rules.
Well, yeah, but if you've never been to a live race, and people have told me this, and I really didn't believe them until I hit Talladega that one year.
Right.
It's a whole different kind of show.
Yeah, it really is. And it is. This is 100% cash grab. It's all for the fans. They're all having a great time. That's the whole purpose behind the Sprint All-Star Race. It's a bonus. It's a cash grab. Winner gets $1 million. We'll talk about it coming up here in just a minute. And again, we'll be talking with somebody who was there at the track during all this mess. But first things first. Facebook.com/The Fastest Hour in Radio, plus at Fastest Hour on Twitter, and where else are we? Instagram, I think. I have no idea where all
Facebook,
we are.
Instagram.
Yeah. Twitter.
YouTube.
YouTube, we have the channel there. Make sure you subscribe because you can get the replays. This one may be a little delayed because Dustin's the man in charge of that, and my computer is slow as Christmas, so trying to render 2 hours worth of show for a replay is not going to be an easy thing for me. I'm just saying. I'm good enough to be able to host the show. The whole technical thing, that's behind-the-scenes stuff that I can't get into. I just not good at it.
And that's why Dustin and I are here.
That's right. All right, here we go. Matt, hang on for me. We'll get to you soon, but let's get into the chronological order here. And as we were getting off the air last week, starting right about 8:30 a.m. Central Time last Saturday, FIA Formula E Berlin E-Prix got underway. When all was said and done, it was Sebastian Buemi holding the winner's trophy. Started on the pole, or I should say, started second to pole sitter Jean-Eric Vergne. Took a little bit of patience to work his way around Jean-Eric Vergne, but when it happened, he was gone, left everybody else behind, claimed his second win of the season. Daniel Abt worked strategy well, came home second, trailed by points leader Lucas de Grassi. Nicolas Prost and Jean-Eric Vergne slipped back to fifth. So your updated standings in that series show Buemi has now closed up on the points leader. Lucas de Grassi holds a slim 1-point lead, at the same time distancing both of themselves from the rest of the pack, because Sam Bird, who is third in points, is 59 down. Jerome D'Ambrosio now 77 behind. Nicolas Prost is 79 points from the lead. Those two all but eliminated from title contention with only 3 races left. Constructors' Cup standings, Renault Edam still in the lead, up 11 points over ABT Schaeffler Audi Sport. Virgin Racing 82 behind. Dragon Racing trailing by 90. Those two all but out of title contention as well. Now, that said, before the E-Prix was done, NASCAR got in the rain-delayed Camping World Truck Series underway, Charlotte Motor Speedway. When that was done, two-time defending series champion showed why he is exactly that, and that he is not done seeking titles. Matt Crafton, winning back-to-back titles, had never won back-to-back races in his career, and it's lengthy. He's 39 years old, until he pulled off the feat by leading 47 of the 134 laps on Saturday. Even beat a moonlighting Kyle Busch by a fairly significant margin, so congratulations to Matt. Following that pair, Johnny Sauter third, Tyler Reddick fourth, Matt Tifft in the top 5. Rest of your top 10, Spencer Gallagher, Timothy Peters, Christopher Bell, Daniel Hemrick, and pole sitter William Byron, who finishes 10th. So no new winners. Crafton, along with William Byron, John Hunter Nemechek, and Johnny Sauter, are in the season-ending chase for the Camping World Truck Series titles. That said, only 8 people will qualify. The non-winning qualifiers at this time rounded out by Timothy Peters, Daniel Hemrick, Spencer Gallagher, and Ryan Truex.
So Chris Bell is not in the
not yet.
chase?
He's fighting.
That's my guy.
He's showing to be a good kid that won last year at Eldora, surprising
I think
a whole lot of people.
the first time I saw him race.
Yeah, surprised a whole lot of people by claiming that win, because that was really about the first time ever he had been in a Camping World Truck Series truck.
I saw him drive, and it was just like, wow, this kid's got some moves.
He does.
And
I think he's going to be
so
a real
rooting
talented
for Chris.
kid. Yep. Not yet. Give the kid a little time. Then we get to Saturday night. They were able to dodge the rain. Rain moved out of the way. Didn't have to worry about the weather for the most part. And supposedly, it's a night for NASCAR to shine, but it was mass confusion that took over the spotlight. When the race was over and said and done, it was Joey Logano hoisting the $1 million check for the non-points event, getting by Kyle Busch with 2 laps to go to claim the win. But the racing in and of itself wasn't the problem. It was the confusing format. NASCAR had set up this event as a 113-lap event, 2 50-lap segments followed by a 13-lap shootout finish. During those 2 50-lap segments, the drivers were required to make a green flag pit stop during each one. Now,
here's where it gets interesting.
Yes. A yellow at the end of the first 50-lap caution caused major confusion among the drivers, including 3-time champion Tony Stewart, who said, quote, "It's the dumbest damn thing I've ever been a part of." Winner Joey Logano agreed with Tony Stewart, said, "I was confused. All I know is that there's a car in front of me, probably should pass him." That's kind of where my head was. Doesn't have to be as complicated as you think it is. Confusion came in when NASCAR said that in working out this particular format, they didn't anticipate a driver or drivers, in this case Chase Elliott, waiting until the last laps to make said green flag pit stop, and therefore causing a yellow, trapping several cars, which included Tony Stewart a lap down and Chase Elliott himself having to serve a penalty.
Yeah, they should have anticipated that.
The yellow also caught the 20 of Matt Kenseth flat-footed because they had yet to pit either, and because the yellow, they had to serve a 1-lap penalty because they didn't follow the rules of doing a green flag pit stop.
Wasn't Matt's, he's like the one of the only few that stayed out on that first 50-lapper?
Yeah. Kenseth said of his plan, the team's plan, the 20's plan, I've never been this confused in a race car in my entire life. So I hope everybody watching understands because I have no idea what happened ever since the first car pitted. I don't know what's going on. Scott Miller, who's the senior VP for NASCAR in competition, said that in working up the format, they attempted to think of all scenarios. Apparently, you didn't. But whiffed on a driver, risking staying out as long as possible before pitting. Miller said, quote, "It was a very unique situation. We did not, in our race procedures, have a mechanism to correct that. Duh." Also, seemingly not accounted for, the appearance of Kyle Busch speeding on pit road in order to avoid having to pit between the middle and final segments, and Jimmy Johnson obviously sandbagging to avoid having to make the mandatory 4-tire pit stop between segments, but they didn't count either one of those as penalties. There's a rule in NASCAR that they instituted this year. Speeding on pit road, we all know, right? Start at the end of the line, or if you're under green flag conditions, you have to serve the drive-through penalty through pit road. The Jimmy Johnson penalty that they did not enforce states that all drivers at all times are to do their absolute level best. In other words, give 100%. And I'm sorry, when you can obviously tell that a driver is sandbagging so that he doesn't have to be in the top 9, 10, or 11 drivers that has to come down pit road and pit and have all the other drivers go in front of them, where's the penalty for that?
You know, in watching, and keep in mind, I was watching this and I fell asleep.
Okay, gotcha. And it was fairly late at night. I can understand that.
Yeah, but I got to give NASCAR credit for one thing.
Yeah?
And only one thing.
Okay.
They admitted they screwed up, and that's the only credit they get.
That's true. From segment 1 to segment 2, and hang on, Matt, I see you on the phone. We're going to get to you here in just a second. Several drivers, including Tony Stewart, Matt Kenseth, and Casey Kane, involved in a crash 20 laps into segment 2, and that ended their nights. After which Stewart, who came out of the infield care center, fired off at NASCAR. I have the quote for you, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you hear it from Tony in his own words.
But Smoke, the 24 of Chase Elliott was trying to wave off to the cars behind him. He was going to pit, but it definitely has been one of those undescribable nights.
I'm as baffled as everybody. I don't know how in the hell we were scored a lap down after they stopped the 20 car and they pit everybody together, lap down and lead lap and lap down. It's the most screwed up all-star race I've ever been a part of. I'm glad this is the last one.
The good news is you're okay.
Yeah, I'm all right, except I'm just madder in hell because I don't understand how in the hell they've officiated this whole thing from start to finish.
Tony Stewart talking about his all-star race and, of course, referencing the fact that this being his last one as he's retiring at the end of the year. When all was said and done, Joey Logano's your winner, trailed by Brad Keselowski, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, Trevor Bayne, Greg Biffle, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch making up your top 10. Local guy from our area got a hold of us on Facebook, Matt, who is from the Oxford area. You happen to be, from what I understand, at Charlotte, North Carolina last weekend. You've heard everything. You've heard Tony Stewart complaining about it, Matt Kenseth baffled as well, and other drivers equally as confused, including the winner, Joey Logano. From your vantage point in the stands, Matt, and by the way, thank you for calling in, and welcome into the Memorial Day weekend. We appreciate you calling and taking the time. What was your viewpoint? How did it look from you in the stands?
It's so hard to put into words what it looked like from the stands. Every word that they used, confused, baffled, in dismay, any word that you could use to describe a negative situation of confusion, that's myself and probably I would say the 55 to 60,000 other people that were there were in the same state of mind. It was horrendous to watch. Put that in a nutshell.
It wasn't, and this is not a slam on Fox Sports 1. It's just the way that, the microphones are set up at the particular tracks and cameras and such like that, to where you can't really get a great view of the reaction of the fans.
Right.
When all of this was all said and done, what was the reaction from the fans as a whole? I mean, were they cheering? Were they kind of half clapping but mostly confused? By the time everything's said and done, how are the fans in the stands looking at this whole thing?
from my viewpoint, everyone, I would describe it as one of those situations where you'd say a guy would take his hat off and scratch his head going, okay, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
I would say after each segment, that was the vibe that I got. I was sitting with a group of gentlemen. A few of them were from Iowa and a few were from Virginia. And the gentleman, one of the guys from Virginia, said that this is the most confusing thing I've ever watched. What got everybody in the stands, for the most part, was after each segment, they would roll the cars off for one lap and then roll them back down pit road at the entrance to pit road, because my seats were at the entrance line to pit road coming right off of turn 4.
Okay.
There were 8 officials down there standing, checking all of the lug nuts, and we were all saying, if the field is frozen and you've got time to pull to the end of pit road and stop, why don't you check them before you leave your pit box to save that one lap?
Yeah,
that was astounding to watch.
Now that you mention that, I want to say I seem to remember seeing that at one point in time, watching all the officials do that. But I think by the time FS1 was showing that, they were just coming back from commercial. I didn't realize they'd already gone around on a warm-up lap.
Yes, they made one lap. The cars would pull to the end of pit road at a slow pace. I would say it was under pit road speed. They would ease around the track in single file order and then come back to the entrance of pit road. And it was roughly 8 officials were standing there. One official would go down each side. The cars would come in double file. One official would come down each side of the cars, checking the lug nuts on the front and the rear. And then 2 officials were standing in the front, and I want to say there were a couple more doing something else too. The 2 officials on each car would check the lug nuts, and then they would wave them off, and they would reline up single file and with the field being frozen. And everyone was going, why do you not check the lugs before they leave the pit stall, before they roll back onto the racetrack?
That would seem to make more sense.
Astounding.
Wow. Okay, so this whole thing was basically a mess from the get-go then.
Exactly right.
It sounds like a cluster.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, beyond a cluster.
And here's the thing. I mean, this is supposed to be a fun time for everybody. This is a chance for the guys to shine. This is the cash grab. You're right. Either getting the checkers or you're bringing out the wrecker, and it doesn't matter. You know, granted, it's a fairly expensive car, but these guys are going for the money. They're going for the bonus. And that's what's supposed to make it so much fun for the fans. It's like old Saturday night racing, kind of, knock down the number of laps that we're running for, and it's just go for the check. But in this case, it seems like NASCAR, they really didn't think this one out as well as they should have.
No, they didn't. And the vibe, my impression I had of the whole night during the rain delay when the thunderstorm came through up there, when it was about time for qualifying to start, and I was in a group of about probably 40 or 50 people sitting in one area that stayed dry because those grandstands up there were leaking water pretty bad.
Nice.
We were all watching Twitter to keep up with qualifying and see how the lineup was going to be set. And I happened to catch one off of Denny Hamlin's feed. He was going, for lack of a better term, he was going ballistic because they were all complaining that we did get practice time, but NASCAR was calling that 30 minutes of practice time they got that morning wasn't enough. And then the showdown with the 5 cars that transferred in from the showdown via the wins and the fan vote, they called that they didn't get practice either. So they lined it up by points, and everybody thought, okay, this is fixing to start off from wrong right here. They didn't give them the opportunity like, hey, let's do a random draw or something. Blind draws for your starting spot. Let's go with it. Let's go have fun. This is supposed to be a unique night. Everybody's supposed to have fun. Let's have fun with a qualifying draw.
Wow.
But that was it right there, and everybody thought, this is about to get crazy. And lo and behold, it did.
Yeah, well, that's an understatement. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's a big understatement.
Yeah. All right, so let me ask this question. Does this sour you on the idea of going back to another All-Star race?
It does not.
Okay. I think that's probably the most important part.
It's been on my bucket list for many, many years, and we had the opportunity to go, and we took it. It was my wife's first chance to go to a night race, period.
Okay.
And we went. She enjoyed it. I had been to Charlotte before, and I'll definitely go back because I think it can get a lot better. And in regards to the racing part, they've got a little bit of work to do with that being a short dash style race to make it a little bit better.
Right.
But because I did not see very many passes for the lead or passes within the top 10 for the first and second segment.
Right.
The opening 10, 11 laps when Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick were door-to-door racing, that was a good show. And then when Kyle Larson ran Brad Keselowski down in the second segment, that was good. But other than that, there was not very, very much passing under green. The second segment, they got strung out. My wife said, she said, this looks like sometimes when they do it at Talladega, they get nose to tail.
Right.
And all 40 or 43 of them are running single file. I said, yep, it sure does.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, the one thing that we do know, Matt, and I was encouraged when you said that this doesn't turn you off, is the one thing that we know, NASCAR, if nothing else, they'll change the rules on the fly, and they're going to try and make the racing better if they can.
Right. I agree.
So hopefully at this point in time they will have learned from their lessons, and next year they will get it all fixed. John?
I sure hope so.
Do you guys think that a 50-lap bonus would help the racing during the first two segments?
As
far
as in this case, like after the first 50 laps, you get a bonus?
Yeah, the leader would get like a, 5,000, 10,000, whatever bonus kind of,
I think it could, but I don't think it's going to be the biggest change of all. When your end result check, and Matt, feel free to disagree if you do, when the final check is $1 million.
Well, not necessarily 5 or 10, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
a substantial.
You got to have a significant bonus. It's probably going to have to be something like $100,000.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Matt, what do you think?
Me, I kind of disagree.
Okay.
To an extent, I agree with you, but to an extent, I disagree. I think to make the racing better and make everybody race harder, at the end of segment 1 and segment 2, and if they expand to 10 segments next year, who knows what they're going to do? But
yeah, no doubt.
At the end of each segment, when you've got your starting field, allocate how many cars are going to be eliminated after the first segment. If you don't get up there and race your you-know-what off, and you're in, say, the bottom 5 or the bottom 6, you're parking it for the rest of the night.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
The guys that are out there racing, trying to putting on the show, going out there, getting after it, going for $1 million, they're going to put on their show, but it's, say, example, like Jimmy Johnson doing the sandbagging, and
right.
We called that out from minute 1.
So it was as obvious to you in the stands as it was on TV?
Oh, by far.
Okay.
Because when we saw Danica Patrick close down from him from 3/4 of a straightaway on the backstretch, and she had him caught by the time they started this next lap going into turn 1 and left him. We all said Johnson is sandbagging.
Uh-huh.
Johnson's laying back to get that spot to where he doesn't have to pit and he can be up front. But on the restart with a 13-lap segment, we all said, yep, that got you, buddy. He got shoved 4 wide going into 1 and got left.
Yeah, quickly. It would have been a better thing for him to have gone ahead and tried to pit.
I agree.
Yep, absolutely.
We all agreed on that, too.
All right. Matt, I appreciate the time, and you're down enjoying a little bit more time off on this Memorial Day weekend, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. Standing out here at Choctahatchee Bay and at the Mid-Bay Bridge in Destin, Florida, enjoying some time off.
Well, you enjoy it. The time down there for us, and keep the toes in the sand, okay?
All right, I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate the time, no doubt.
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, this is something I do want to go to. I think that going there on All-Star Weekend when and we'll get to the Hall of Fame announcement coming up in a little bit as well. They announced the Hall of Fame for the next year, the class, and all the festivities that are going on around there. I would love to go there and spend the better part of a week and culminate that week. Maybe it starts with the All-Star, maybe it ends with Coca-Cola 600, whatever it is, but have that All-Star race in there. I'd love to do it. And again, they change this constantly. This year, they just didn't sit down and think about everything. And I cannot believe that Scott Miller would say that they didn't think that some driver might try to make it all the way to the very end of the segment before they pitted. That was the first thing I thought of when they said, okay, mandatory green flag pit stops at some point in time during the 50 laps. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, somebody's going to get halfway. In fact, most of the drivers, I kind of predicted this, most of the drivers will go to about halfway and they're going to go ahead and pit. But there's going to be one or two, maybe 3 or 4 drivers. They're going to try and press this thing out as far as they can to go 45, 46, 47 laps. Chase Elliott, Matt Kenseth. How in the world can the people who are in charge of NASCAR not come up with that scenario?
One phrase.
Yes.
Duh.
Okay, I'll work with that. Memorial Day weekend is big, but last weekend there was one more event here. Do we have time to talk about the NHRA? How much time do we have here?
We got about 2 minutes to break.
Okay, here we go. Topeka, Kansas. Kansas. Hey, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. Topeka, Kansas. NHRA running the Kansas Nationals. When it was done, Doug Coletta grabbing another Top Fuel win, this time beating out Antron Brown in the final, posting a 4.452 elapsed time at 238.85 miles per hour. Yes, in Top Fuel, that is what they call slow. It's because both drivers lost traction off the line and had to muscle their racers to the finish line. Funny car, Matt Hagan, besting his teammate Jack Beckman, gunned his car to a 5.724 elapsed time at 179.04 miles per hour. Those two also lost traction off the line and had to feather the throttle to the end of the 1,000-foot line. No such problems, though, for Jason Line, continuing his pro stock dominance. 6.664 elapsed time, 207.85 miles per hour. He beat out Greg Anderson. So now you have Doug Coletta. He's got 3 straight Top Fuel feature wins, holds a 95-point lead over Antron Brown in the standings. Brittany Force down 130. Steve Torrance 153 back. Clay Millican 270 behind. Funny car, top 5, Courtney Force up 12 on Jack Beckman. Tim Wilkerson 47 back. Matt Hagan trailing by 90. Robert Hite 91 from the lead. And in pro stock, the top 5 dominated by Jason Line, now with a 126-point cushion over Greg Anderson. Bo Butner 328 down. Alan Johnson 477 behind and is tied in 4th with Drew Skillman. Whew, pro stock seems like it's almost done, but there's plenty of racing left to go. In fact, plenty of racing this weekend. We'll talk about the Memorial Day racing weekend when we come back. We're only 1 quarter in to this weekend's Memorial Day edition of the Fastest Hour in Radio. Thank you for joining us. Please do so at 941-1011 or 866-551-9933.
You're listening to the Fastest Hour in Radio on Superstation 101.
Let's face it, it's always been hard to kick the smoking habit until now. Don't wait to take the next step of pulling away from the pack. Experience the healthier alternative of smoking by vaping with Wild Vapors. Whether you're taking the turn or coming along in the straightaway, it's time to hit the deep brakes on cigarettes and turn into Wild Vapors. Wild Vapors is known for their signature formula for their own brands. They only use the purest vaping juice on the circuit without sucralose or diacetyl. Stop filling up your tank with the wrong fuel and swap to the healthier, cleaner solution through Wild Vapors. The crew at Wild Vapors is there to answer your questions and concerns about vaping. They're the reliable team you need as your pit crew when taking the turn towards the healthier alternative to cigarettes. They offer a full line of vaping supplies and guidance to help you quit cigarettes without falling off the track. Make sure you miss the big one by ditching the cigarettes and stop in at Wild Vapors. Find the healthier alternative to smoking. Make your next pit stop at Wild Vapors of Sylacauga today. 256-369-2569. Find them in the Sylacauga Walmart Shopping Center or their Alexander City location. Stay on track with Wild Vapors.
4 new tires and a tank of gas. And we're back to the Fastest Hour in Radio on Superstation 101.
Hey, welcome back in. Fastest Hour in Radio rolls on, and, well, we finally wrapped up talking about last weekend. So this weekend, Memorial Day, and it's usually kind of crown jewel time, if you will. Memorial Day racing weekend begins tonight. Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Hisense 300 for the Xfinity Series is going to be on Fox Sports 1 and PRN Radio. It actually happens this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time, weather permitting. From what I understand, there is quite the Atlantic storm just off the coast in South Carolina specifically, but you never know. Maybe some of those bands of rain could find themselves making their way up into the North Carolina area. We're hoping not. We're hoping it stays off on just over on the coastline. And while our thoughts and our prayers are with the people on the South Carolina and southern North Carolina coast, that said, we're hoping that the racing gets in as well. Sunday morning, U.S. time, kicks off a busy day with the Formula One Grand Prix of Monaco. Runs on the 19-turn, 2.07-mile-long Monaco circuit. Love that course, love this race, and so do the drivers. This is one of, if not the, crown jewel in the Formula One season, and yes, they do run it during the middle of the year. NBC Sports Network will get coverage underway with F1 Extra, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central Time, the race to start 30 minutes later. Speaking of crown jewels happening in the middle of the season, Sunday will continue with the famed Indy 500 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this year marking the 100th running of the famed event. It'll air on ABC and the IMS radio network. It begins at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central Time. James Hinchcliffe actually sits on the pole. Great story there. We'll get to that when we talk about IndyCar racing a little bit later on in the show. And, of course, racing will wrap up. NASCAR doing the Sprint Cup Series. Coca-Cola 600, longest race of the year for the NASCAR Sprint Cup guys, airs Sunday evening. Fox, the main network, along with the Performance, or PRN, Performance Racing Network. Coverage gets underway 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time. Nice run by Martin Truex Jr., who claimed the pole for the event, doing so on Thursday. Why qualifying was held on Thursday, I don't know, but hey, it's not like we've figured out a whole lot of what NASCAR does here lately.
I was going to say, just look at the All-Star race and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Motor Racing Network, speaking of which, these were the guys that had the call on the All-Star race. They reported that NASCAR officials regretted a controversial call that left all those cars one lap down in the All-Star race last weekend, and because of their call, not only were several competitive cars left a lap down, but it left, as we mentioned before, Matt Kenseth with no time to pit under the 20-car strategy, which was to wait as late as possible on the 90-lap run, or 50-lap run, I should say. Steve O'Donnell, NASCAR's executive VP and chief racing development officer, said, quote, "In hindsight, we didn't have the wave-around rule." You heard Tony Stewart talking about that, how we got caught a lap down, and I have no idea why. No wave-around rule either. Oops. Once you mandate, said O'Donnell, that teams come down to change tires together, it prevented us from having a wave-around. We trapped cars a lap down. Do we wish we could have had that, the wave-around rule, in place? Absolutely. Could we have made a call to wave them around anyway? We probably could have. Yeah.
But didn't.
Yeah. The guys who had a lap up on everybody, what would they say? Who cares? I don't care what the people that are a lap up say about not having the wave around rule, because guess what? The wave around rule is in your rule book. Again, this is going back to the whole mass confusion thing. O'Donnell wrapped it up by saying it was an unfortunate circumstance. We thought we had anticipated everything, but this one snuck up on us.
Yeah, I was watching the first 50-lapper, and they tuned into Matt Kenseth's radio, and he was almost livid and going, I don't know why they didn't red flag and give me a chance to pit. Nobody knows. Which they should have, because that's what they were intending to do, but yeah, they didn't. Exactly. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't think that NASCAR truly understands exactly how bad they screwed this up. Now, we played Tony Stewart's soundbite. I'm going to play this again for you. Okay? Or we're going to play this again for you. And the reason why I want to play this again is because we had a lot of people wondering whether Tony Stewart was going to get penalized, because he got penalized right after he came back for criticizing NASCAR in relation to the lug nut rule, the safety rule. Yes, he did. Okay. Well, NASCAR penalized him $35,000 because they said that he was denigrating the sport in and of itself. So listen to this. See what you think about this statement by Tony Stewart.
But Smoke, the 24 of Chase Elliott was trying to wave off to the cars behind him. He was going to pit, but it definitely has been one of those undescribable nights.
I'm as baffled as everybody. I don't know how in the hell we were scored a lap down after they stopped the 20 car and they pit everybody together, lap down and lead lap and lap down. It's the most screwed up all-star race I've ever been a part of. I'm glad this is the last one.
The good news is you're okay.
Yeah, I'm all right, except I'm just madder than hell because I don't understand how in the hell they've officiated this whole thing from start to finish.
All right, so that's Tony Stewart calling out NASCAR's officiating. Would that not be? And I'm just asking, and I'm going to bring Dustin in. Would those statements by Tony Stewart not be considered, John, I'll start with you, as denigrating NASCAR?
Yeah, he's cracking down on the officials, but he also has reason to crack down because they didn't know what the heck was going on to begin with.
All right, Dustin, howdy, first of all.
Yeah. Hi, buddy. What's up?
Welcome to South Carolina, from what I understand.
Yes, just crossing to South Carolina.
Okay, so from the All-Star race last week, you heard Tony Stewart's comments, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Obviously considered critical of NASCAR. Earlier this year, he got fined $35,000 for being critical of NASCAR. This the same thing or different to you?
I think this is completely different. In both instances, Tony was right. Somebody has to be there for the accountability. Somebody has to be there to say, hey, you guys screwed up. And that's exactly what he did this past weekend at the All-Star race. He basically told them exactly what everybody else was thinking, and he just did it with that wonderful style that is Tony Stewart. He doesn't care. He's going to tell you his opinion, and they might want to just get on the train or not. They're going to take it as disparaging comments towards NASCAR, but what are they going to do? Okay, they're going to hit him with a fine, and that's about it. He still made his point known, which everybody clearly knew.
Yeah.
It was a screwed-up event.
I will give NASCAR credit on this one. They specifically mentioned earlier on this week that Tony Stewart was not going to get fined for his comments.
Yeah, and that was probably their best move, because if they were to fine him for basically saying what everybody else who watched that, I don't even want to call it an event, I would call it a circus.
Debacle?
Debacle, circus,
debacle would be a good word, but like times 10.
Right. We had talked with Matt. You and Matt had started the online conversation through our Facebook page, facebook.com/thefastesthour on radio. He called in. We probably spent, John, 15 minutes talking about it, give or take?
Yeah, give or take.
And when it was all said and done, and just before we went to commercial break, and I asked him this one question because this to me was the end-all be-all. Every once in a while, we'll hear somebody, they'll go to a race, and it could be, and we'll use Charlotte, North Carolina, just because that's where they were last weekend and will be this weekend. They go, they experience something like this, they're soured on the entire experience of going to another race. I asked him, would you be willing to go to another All-Star race? And without hesitation, he said yes. And I think part of the reason is, and this is something that you and I have also complimented NASCAR on, is the fact that while they will make mistakes, sometimes they own up to them, sometimes they don't, they fix them quickly too.
Yes, they do. And it has to be one of those overnight type changes, because if they don't change it immediately, if they don't make it better, that experience that has been lost by one will be lost by many, and then people will stop coming. So you have to keep the All-Star race above everything else as that big time event. Almost as big, if not bigger, than the Daytona 500 as much as possible, with it being the mid-season, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things where NASCAR does, you're right, they do a great job listening to the fans and changing immediately. This is something within probably the first caution of the race, they probably put their heads together and said, this has got to change, because we're going to have very, very upset people.
Yeah, and they did.
Hey, Dustin, we were talking with Matt also about how Jimmy Johnson sandbagged the last second 50 lapper.
Yeah.
What do you think NASCAR can do differently to prevent sandbagging in the All-Star race?
There's not really much they can do for sandbagging. You're going to have the sandbagging, especially in that event. No matter what they do, no matter what they throw at the drivers, you got to look at Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus. They are, there is no words to describe those two. They are so methodical in figuring out how to do things that it's almost uncanny to even try and figure out how to defeat them, because ultimately that's all you're trying to do. You're trying to basically beat Chad Knaus's brain whenever you throw anything at them. So no matter what you do, they're going to sandbag. But ultimately, it saves the car.
Here's the thing that bothers me probably the most, and John was, I think, caught a little bit unaware by this particular rule. The rule that was instituted for this year, which states that all drivers must attempt to give 100% at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, did they just throw that entire rule book out for the All-Star race? Because that's the way it appeared. Jimmy Johnson was this was blatantly obvious, even including Matt and all the people that he was with that weren't necessarily friends. It were people that he had just met. He mentioned that there were people from Iowa and people from Virginia that were sitting around him, and he, of course, is from here in Alabama. And all of them are sitting there talking about how Danica Patrick, who was more than a straightaway back,
Danica beat him.
You know, suddenly by the time that she comes off of turn 2 and she's a full straightaway behind Jimmy Johnson, by the time they hit the start-finish line or right around turn 1 of the next lap, Danica's blown his doors off. When it's that obvious, I'm sorry, you're sandbagging and you're not giving the 100%.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I fully agree with that. The only thing is you can sit there and you know, straight out say that somebody is, which he clearly was. There is no doubt in my mind. But the only thing is you can have something, basically a game plan. Look back to Richmond a few years back with Clint Boyer. You know, it's awfully hot in there. Why don't you scratch that itch?
Yeah.
You have some sort of game plan prior to even getting into that car. These two have codes. They can talk. They can do whatever they want to do, and each of them understands what they're meaning. So it's very, very – it's not a foregone conclusion that he basically told him to lay back somehow, or we're having an issue, or things like that can come up. You can sit there and say, well, you're not giving forth 100% effort. Well, we were having a problem. We were trying to fix it. That's all they can come back with. I mean, it's kind of one of those deals where it's basically he said, she said, and ultimately it really has no basis. Now, if you go out there and you do something blatantly and you have no reason why, or you can't throw an excuse or a reason or any of those things out there, then you're going to get hit with it. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. You can do it all day long. If you've got something to back up why you were running weird or why you weren't running at full strength, what are they supposed to say? You're lying?
He's got a point there.
He's got a point, but I'm sorry, dude. You know, you're not going to sell me on anything that you were trying to fix a problem or anything like that. Dude, you were sitting there making sure that you didn't get caught having to come down pit road and make that four-tire change between segments 2 and segment 3. But here's the thing. As they say, payback is, well, I'm not going to use that word, but, you know, payback, karma's a pain in the butt. And it didn't work out for him.
No, it didn't. And that's the thing. We knew going into this past weekend for the All-Star race, we were going to have this whole new rules package, whole new setup, whole new All-Star race. So nobody knew what to expect. So now going into, well, we don't even know what we're going to have next year, because basically whatever rules and all the wonderful little write-ups they had for this one, they just tossed back out the window. So we don't even know what we're going to get next year. But all these guys, we talk about it constantly. You bring it up, above all. You say, you know, they throw the rule book out. They go through the rule book. Don't look for what's in the rule book. They look for what's not in the rule book.
Exactly.
So the thing is that is why I go back to what I say. You cannot tell me that, you know, Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus are not figuring that book out. They go through that thing with a fine-tooth comb and figure out what they can do and what they can't do. And those two guys, when you put their heads together, you're going to have some problems.
Yeah, no doubt. There are certain teams or certain players in every single sport where they'll say that person, that coach, in this case, that crew chief, they're playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. And regardless of what you think about Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus is playing chess. Everyone else is playing checkers, it seems like.
Well, I mean, exactly. And, you know, you bring up a good thing with different sports. You look at NASCAR, you've got Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus. And now this is where I'm going to give Steve some gloating. This is where you go to football and you look at Tom Brady and, oh, my gosh, I just forgot his coach's name.
Bill Belichick.
That guy, Mr. Hoodie. You put those two together, they are the NFL equivalent of Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus. You can go into any sport and figure out there's a player and there's a coach that can put their heads together exact same way as Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus.
Yep. All right, moving on here. Let's try and get to happier stuff. Well, this one not necessarily so happy for Joe Gibbs Racing. News came out right after the weekend. Longtime Matt Kenseth sponsor Dollar General ending their sponsorship agreement with Kenseth and Joe Gibbs Racing. The company reportedly pulling out of NASCAR altogether as opposed to moving over to another team and or driver. Before the 2014 season began, the car began to see a switch in sponsors from longtime sponsor of the 20, Home Depot, gradually giving way to Dollar General until Home Depot was off the car entirely last year. Dollar General sponsored 30 races 2015 and this season, so Joe Gibbs, of all the teams that you would have figured needing sponsorship, it would not have been Joe Gibbs Racing if you were to ask me who was going to need sponsorship for 2017.
Yeah, this one caught me like completely by surprise. Just the way that Dollar General has really invested themselves not only into NASCAR and into Joe Gibbs Racing, but into Matt Kenseth. And with having his book come out, the little children's book that he did, and being out in the stores, and just how genuine they were. When I saw this story come out, I was just shocked because I did not see them leaving. I mean, having so much success with Matt Kenseth, with JGR, and being at the forefront and taking over that 20 machine, I really didn't see them going anywhere, but it made sense later on once I started to read a little bit more into it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. They've got, again, this half of the season to try and figure that out. So one sponsor headed out, another one, this one for Roush Fenway Racing, sticking around for a while longer, Fastenal. They've signed on to continue sponsoring the number 17 of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They're currently in their 5th year together, Roush Fenway and Fastenal. First teaming up with Carl Edwards back when he was in the number 99, and they moved over to the number 17 of Stenhouse Jr. when Edwards moved over to Joe Gibbs Racing. It was not said how long the extension is for, but it was termed as a long-term deal, so congratulations for them for being able to keep that. And I will say this, we're seeing some life. There seems to be a pulse over there at Roush Fenway Racing, something we didn't know that we had last year. This year, it looks like that pulse is actually there, and it may be stronger than what we've seen over the past couple of years.
Well, they need to figure something out anyway, because come next year, they're going to have 4 new cars over in the stables of Ford that's going to be working with them. So they need to figure something out now. It's been great to see them have a bit of a resurgence. We saw Trevor Bayne for the All-Star race during the pre-races and everything, and just seeing how well these boys were doing. Greg Biffle, another one. We've been waiting for them. We've been waiting for them to find that groove, that thing, something to bring themselves back out. And I think this past weekend for the All-Star event, I think that was the turning point. I think that is going to put them in a little bit better of a playing field. I think it's going to give them a lot bigger of a boost. And I think throughout the rest of the season, we're going to see them slowly chip away. They're not going to make huge strides, but they're going to start chipping away at what they had built up before that they lost. Look for Roush Fenway to continue to build, and now that they're going to bring it over that 4-car stable of Stewart Haas Racing next year in 2017, that's going to give them even more feedback. It's going to give them a lot more veterans in the mix and bringing things back up. Roush Fenway, dare I say, Ford's on a resurgence on that side.
Yeah, you may be right about that. That said, we got some great sponsors of our own that we love to talk about. They've been longtime sponsors of ours, and we are appreciative of them. We're talking about Wild Vapors. John knows a little bit about this. Dustin, you know a lot about this because these guys have pretty much taken you from how much were you smoking before you finally quit and moved over to vaping?
I was at about a pack to a pack and a half of Marlboro Reds a day.
Okay, and you were able to pretty much dump them and go to this and not really feel all that different, or what?
Not at all. I basically set cigarettes down the same day that I picked up the vapor and never looked back. I didn't have any problems. You talk about it before, the fact that there's so many different things that people try to do, whether they be the gums, different types of lollipops and all kinds of, the patches and the gums and everything, but nothing ever worked. For me, it was easy for me to understand what was going on. I knew what I needed to do, and I knew exactly how to do it, and that was with the great help of our good friends, Shelly and Eddie Bowman down at Wild Vapors. We walked in that day, we talked, we asked all the questions. We were in there for about 3 hours, and she took the time to sit there and explain everything to us to know the ins and outs, what we were doing, how we were doing it, juice-wise, from startup to finish. Before we walked out the door, everything was set. We were vaping when we walked out the door that day. We never even picked the cigarettes back up. We just went straight to vaping, and it's been the greatest thing since. You can definitely do the same thing. It doesn't matter what you've done or how you've done it. You can get it done with Wild Vapors and know that the confidence level is going to be great because we've dealt with them. I've dealt with them. We know so many people that have. You can too. Give them a call today, 256-369-2569. Visit them on Facebook as well, facebook.com/wild.vapors.5. They always post great information, but if you want to take that step, if you know you need to do it, because everybody needs to, get rid of those cigarettes today. Give them a call. Stop in the Walmart Shopping Center in Sylacauga or in Alexander City, 1 block from Central Alabama Community College. Or like I said, give them a call today, 256-2569. Stay on track with Wild Vapors.
John, how are you finding it?
Well, I've gone from a pack to a pack and a half down to 3 to 5 cigarettes a day.
Okay.
I haven't totally knocked out the cigarette just because I have a weak will, but it does work.
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Everybody is different. Everybody's body is different, and that's exactly what Shelley has. I've seen her in many, many times. As a matter of fact, I was in there the other day. Brand new person came in, explained this to me. Her and Chance basically sat there and went over the whole thing. Sometimes people might need a couple cigarettes. They might need that little that comfort zone that they've been in for so long before they can actually progress out. Some people can put the cigarettes down and pick the thing up the same day. Some people it takes a little time, but that willpower that you just said, it can be done.
Well, Dustin, I want to bring up a point too, and not to make this sound like a car commercial for anything, but the service after the sale amazes me. I had some issues with my mod, as you know, and took it into the shop, and Shelley and Eddie went over it and said, well, okay, it needs some help, and before you can get another one, here's a loaner. That floored me.
And see, that's what you get. You don't get that from all these other shops. You don't get that family type atmosphere.
Right.
You go in and they look at you like you're just another person coming through the door with some money in their pocket. When you walk into Wild Vapors, you walk in and you become part of the vaping family. You become part of that healthier alternative community. And you have felt it. You've seen it. You sat there and said, about your experience with them.
Right.
That's what they do down there. They want to make sure that you stick with what you're doing, because if you get a sour taste in your mouth, you're just going to go back to what you did before because your comfort zone was there.
Well, and one other thing I really like about Wild Vapors is they produce their own line of juice.
Yes, that's
and it
right.
has no
Super
additives,
free.
no chemicals or anything. It's just pure juice, and it tastes great. Number one, smells awesome, and my new juice, by the way, is effing amazing.
That's literally the name of it.
That is literally the name of it.
Yes, that is the line. That actually Wild Vapors is going to be taking their juice to the next level. So they're going to be their juice line that they're going to put out. It's called the effing line.
You need to talk to them. You need to find out more about it. And we've said this before, Dustin. Anywhere in the sound of our voice, you can deal with the guys and ladies at Wild Vapors.
Definitely.
Because of the fact that it is certainly worth it. And here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to drive all the way to Sylacauga or Alex City. They're going to work with you through the mail.
That's right. All you got to do, like we've said before, give them a call, ask the questions no matter where you are, whether you are in Alaska, Europe. I don't care if you're in the Arctic Circle. You can get what you need to quit those cigarettes today. Just simply give them a call. Wild Vapors, 256-2569.
I'm living
Make sure
proof.
You just get with them.
I'm what 4 to 6 hours away from the shop.
Yeah.
So I'm living proof that can be done.
Yep, absolutely. Let's move on here and see what we can't get in before we end up hitting halftime here. It's hard to believe we're about to hit 8 o'clock and we get to say it's only halftime. I like that. NASCAR once again announcing aerodynamic tweaks for the Sprint Cup Series. The drivers going to they've been giving positive feedback, and Dustin, you and I have talked about this. We kind of like it as well. The current lower downforce aero packages instituted for the 2016, the drivers like it. Really, the racing seems to have gotten better.
It has. I was kind of, you remember, before this season, I was a little apprehensive. How is this going to affect the racing? How is it going to affect the drivers? What was going to happen this year? I, in my wildest dreams, did not expect what we've gotten this year. We have had some outstanding racing. We have had some great close action. We've seen a lot more passing, but we've also seen the cars be put back in the hands of the drivers.
That said, if a little bit is good, is a lot necessarily better?
Sometimes you push it just a little too much, and then you ruin a good thing.
We're about to find out, because the new package that they're running now brought downforce down from 2,700 pounds in 2015 to 1,800 pounds this year. But testing has revealed that through development by the teams, the numbers have started to creep back up over the 2,000-pound mark. So NASCAR officials now redoing the rules. They want to cut downforce down to as low as 1,500 pounds. Some of the things that they're talking about doing, a combination of lowering the rear spoiler height by another inch, maybe down to as low as 2.5 inches tall. They're talking about cutting spoiler width down from 65 to as little as 53 inches. The width of the front splitter, they're talking about cutting down the edges from their current 5 inches wide to possibly as little as 2 inches wide. Also up for discussion, an earlier elimination of the chassis skew that was implemented last week for the All-Star race, planned for the entire 2017 season. They say it could actually be implemented earlier. Got testing coming up later this season at Kentucky. They're going to use that to check out the possibilities. For the most part, I don't have a problem with them, but again, when does it get to the point where the car becomes so loose you don't have any traction at all?
Pretty much, I think after this rules package, we're going to start to see that a little bit more, especially with the more inexperienced non-veteran type drivers that have become accustomed and grown up into this type. That's where we're going to see the problems. That's ultimately going to spell disaster for somebody who could handle something like that. So I think, you pushing it a little too far, too fast is not a good thing. Let the rules stay as they lie for now. Let it go for a couple of seasons, then make some changes. Make gradual changes. You can't swing for the fences and expect to, hit a home run every time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this works out and whether or not it's going to actually work the way that they want it to. When NASCAR brings the Xfinity Series to Pocono Raceway this year, it's the first time, by the way, in series history, all the way back to when it was implemented as the Busch Series back in the early 1980s. The event officially gets a name. It's going to be called the Pocono Green 250. It's meant to highlight the environmental advances that course has made. The race is going to show off the track's 25-acre solar energy farm behind the Long Pond straightaway, which allows the track to be off of the power grid, using only power from the sun. Race takes place next weekend. We will detail it more next week right here on this show. And in the Camping World Truck Series, Tyler Reddick thinking it might be time to move up a level of racing. Tyler Reddick, who is now 20, told FrontStretch.com he is unsure whether Brad Keselowski Racing wants him back for 2017. Added that as much as he enjoys running in the Truck Series, feels as though it's about time to step up. He signed to Team Penske and being loaned out to BKR, but he's not slated to run any Xfinity Series events this season. Said he's unsure if he'll be back at Penske either, so we'll have to find all of that out. When we come back, Dustin, if you can hang on, please do, because we're going to be talking about the 2017 NASCAR Hall of Fame class. You've only reached the halfway point of the Memorial Day edition of the Fastest Hour in Radio. Stay close. We shall return.
Let's face it, it's always been hard to kick the smoking habit until now. Don't wait to take the next step of pulling away from the pack. Experience the healthier alternative of smoking by vaping with Wild Vapors. Whether you're taking the turn or coming along in the straightaway, it's time to hit the deep brakes on cigarettes and turn into Wild Vapors. Wild Vapors is known for their signature formula for their own brands. They only use the purest vaping juice on the circuit without sucralose or diacetyl. Stop filling up your tank with the wrong fuel and swap to the healthier, cleaner solution through Wild Vapors. The crew at Wild Vapors is there to answer your questions and concerns about vaping. They're the reliable team you need as your pit crew when taking the turn towards the healthier alternative to cigarettes. They offer a full line of vaping supplies and guidance to help you quit cigarettes without falling off the track. Make sure you miss the big one by ditching the cigarettes and stop in at Wild Vapors. Find the healthier alternative to smoking. Make your next pit stop at Wild Vapors of Sylacauga today. 256-369-2569. Find them in the Sylacauga Walmart Shopping Center or their Alexander City location. Stay on track with Wild Vapors.
Back to green flag action on the Fastest Hour in Radio on Superstation 101.
Welcome back in. Fastest Hour in Radio continues. Dustin on the phone. He is working his way up towards Maryland for his annual late spring, early summer pilgrimage to the mid-Atlantic state. And you're somewhere in South Carolina working your way up, towards Greenville? Almost there?
Almost to Greenville. As a matter of fact, probably about, I'd say 15, 20 miles into South Carolina at this point.
Okay, so you're up near the Anderson area then. Anderson,
yeah,
Clemson.
Got a little bit of a late start. Not really when I wanted to. A little delay, just like NASCAR.
Sure.
But it's all good to go.
All right. Well, you be careful on the road out there, okay?
Yeah, man.
NASCAR named their 2017 Hall of Fame class. 5 members going in this year, and this year it's owner-heavy, Dustin. 4 of the 5 members have been on the ballot since the first ballot as well, so they're going to finally see after, 6 or 7 times now? I think it's 7 times that they're finally been named and their chance to be immortalized has come true.
I think it's about that, yeah.
Three of the
It's been a while.
three of the five current team owners. They include Richard Childress, Rick Hendrick, and Raymond Parks. You and I talked about this. You and I have voted in the fan vote. Unfortunately, they don't recognize us as media members yet for the voting panel, but that's something we're working on too. And I got to admit, I did vote Childress because of how long he's been there. I did not vote Hendrick because I didn't think he'd been in there long enough. You had a problem with Raymond Parks.
Yes, I did. And my problem is still my problem. I was shocked when I saw that he was voted in, is the fact that, yes, he was there at the beginning. He brought the drivers in, and, I learned a lot. I knew some about Raymond Parks, but I didn't know everything until I watched that 3-part documentary on NASCAR, Rise of American Speed. That's when I really got clued in a little bit more. And it occurred to me when I saw the ballot that I was not voting for Raymond Parks due to the fact that he bailed. He bailed on Bill France Sr. when it was time to really step up to that next level. He was there at the beginning, the dirt tracks, all that stuff. Everything was there. He was bringing some of the drivers. But then when it was time to make that next level step, he just kind of bolted, and you just didn't hear about him anymore. I was shocked when I saw him voted in. A couple of my picks got voted in. I did not pick Richard Childress, and I also did not pick Rick Hendrick.
Right. The other two that are in there, in addition to Childress, Hendrick, and Parks, are legendary driver Benny Parsons and recently retired Mark Martin. The voting panel, not including the congregate fan vote, includes 53 people in all. So 54 tallies because they take the fan vote, they run them all together, and they count that as one in particular. Benny Parsons gets the most votes, named on 85% of the ballots. Then Rick Hendrick, 62% of the ballots. Mark Martin was named on 57%. Raymond Parks on 53%. Richard Childress got named on 43% of the ballots. All right, I'm going to ask this question. Do you feel like it is a must that we have to have 5 people in there? Or as I looked at this, I thought to myself, shouldn't you be named on a majority of the ballots?
You would think. I fully agree with that. I think if you don't get, over the majority, I do not feel that you should be in. I don't think we need 5. I think when time goes down the road a little bit farther, we're going to be putting people in that maybe are just kind of afterthoughts and stuff like that. I think it's really going to take away from the Hall of Fame. Everybody deserves to be in there at some point or another, but there's going to be a point where we're going to hit where it's just kind of like, well, we need 5. So we'll just bring these 3 guys over in as well.
Yeah. At this point in time, I might change the rules and say if you don't get named on 51% of the ballots, you just don't get in. If that means we only have one person that particular year, then we only have one person that particular year.
Exactly. I tell you what, though, I was extremely happy. I was at the same time, I was a little sad, but I was extremely happy to see Mark Martin get his shot into the Hall of Fame. He's a very deserving person, whether he feels that he is or not. But I was extremely excited, and as soon as I saw it, I told my son Nick, because Nick is a big Mark Martin fan.
Yes, I do.
I said, your boy made it. I said, he got in the Hall of Fame, even though he didn't get that Sprint Cup championship, or didn't get a championship. He still made it in.
Yeah.
And he was so very humble about it. And that was the thing that I loved the most. The one that I was upset about was Ron Hornaday Jr.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I did vote for him. Here's the thing. If you look at Mark Martin's resume, understand that the championship, the Cup Series championship, is not there. The Daytona 500 win is not there. But if you look at the resume, the total number of wins in Cup, in Busch/Nationwide/Xfinity, he's deserving of it. The resume's there.
Oh, yeah, it's there.
Yep.
And not to mention to race as late as he did in his career at his age and still be out there running for wins, no doubt.
Yep, absolutely. That said, Les from Coleman coming in and checking in with us, 9411011, toll-free 866-551-9933. You want to talk about Les Benny Parsons?
Yeah, I was just reading up last night on his bio. He was probably one of our most underrated champions. When he won that 73 championship, I think he beat King Richard by 37 points.
Mm-hmm.
They had to build a car for him during the race, but he was in a crash early, and it ripped the whole right side of the car out. And his crew and other crews didn't want to see Richard win the championship. And they took a roll cage out of another car and put in this car for him to finish. And if you look at his picture, he's sitting in a car. There's nothing on the right side but the door bars. I mean, there's no fenders, no quarter windows, no quarter panels, nothing. And he was an underrated champion.
I agree.
And also, I was noticing they were saying that he was the first one to crack 200, but I thought it was Buddy Baker. So that's why I'm going to ask y'all guys, which one was it, Benny or Buddy?
As I remember, it was Buddy Baker, Dustin.
Yeah, that's exactly how I remember it was Buddy Baker.
Okay.
So, yeah, whoever said that must have gotten Benny and Buddy mixed up.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because I saw the picture. It was 200.07 something. He was on a chalkboard, the pit stop board.
Yep.
And it had it wrote on there.
Yep.
So anyway,
Very good.
great stuff.
Les, I appreciate it.
I called about a month ago, and I was brought to your attention about the loose cars. I thought Greg Biffle would make a resurgence, with Rouse Fenway.
Yeah.
And it's coming to life.
It is.
Anyway.
You called it. Well done, Les. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
You too. Take care. Interesting to note here, some of the other mentions here. We mentioned Childress getting in on 43% of the ballots. 6th, 7th, and 8th were Robert Yates, Red Byron, and then the late Alan Kulwicki in that order. Alan Kulwicki, of course, won the championship, which, and again, we don't mean any disrespect to Mark Martin on this. Alan Kulwicki has that. Do you honestly feel that Alan Kulwicki is one of the next up in the Hall of Fame, Dustin?
He was actually one of the ones on my ballot that I chose.
Okay.
I think Alan Kulwicki is very deserving of it. I'm hoping next year is the year.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see what the ballot looks like next year. By the way, in celebration, Mark Martin going to be the honorary pace car driver for Sunday evening's Coca-Cola 600. So he'll be out there to lead off the race, but just before they go to green for the first time. So nice little deal for him. Also, should be mentioned that going into the Hall of Fame, being honored with the Landmark Award for Outstanding Contributions to NASCAR, it's the founder of Martinsville Speedway, H. Clay Earls. He opened up that paperclip half mile way back in 1947, and of course, it's still one of the cornerstone tracks when it comes to NASCAR, going there twice a year. Love to watch the racing at Martinsville. You've actually been there. More than deserving, H. Clay Earls.
Oh, definitely. What he did with Martinsville was he put a very unique track together, and it still, to this day, as old as that track is, still gives drivers fits. And that is the good sign of a track. When you can be around that long and make it come to pass where you're upsetting drivers years and years down the road, you've done a darn good thing, and H. Clay Earls was definitely the man.
That's right. That said, we bring in another guy who should be Hall of Fame material at some point in time in the very near future. And from Talladega Short Track, we welcome in the one, the only, the often imitated, never duplicated, late model Mark.
Wow, what an introduction. I feel so regal. I should have some bluebonnet margarine. That way I'll have a crown on my head. But good morning, gentlemen.
How are you?
Oh, fine and dandy. I'm just real busy. I've been listening to your show. I'm going to have two comments about NASCAR before I switch to something else, since you guys have been talking about this for a better part of an hour. From my understanding, the first unofficial 200-mile-an-hour run in NASCAR was done by Pete Hamilton in one of the Superbirds, Plymouth Superbirds. That's my understanding.
That
Number
may be
two,
true.
even though I didn't see that farce of horse excrement race Saturday night because I was at Talladega, I got a simple cure for this all-star nonsense that they had Saturday night. You run 250 lappers. You take the top 10 who are going to be in the third segment, have them go down pit road, spin a dang inversion wheel, whether it be 1 or 10, get back in your cars and race.
I like it.
It's just absolute junk. They've done that in late model racing. So that's my 2 cents on that one. It ain't worth 2 cents, maybe only a penny and a half.
No, actually, I like where you're going. I think that's a good idea. I have no problem with that at all.
They've done that at some very large late model races, and it turned out to be quite a barn burner. Sure. And subject number 2 here, the NHRA, what a fantastic event at Kansas where both ends of the national record were set. As far as the NHRA and their all-star races, you have the K&N horsepower shootout for Pro Stock, and then the traction shootouts. You have 7 seated cars, 1 fan boat, no nonsense. You run 3 rounds, straight eliminations, no BS, no joking around. It's not confusing, and those to me are the best all-star events as far as Major League Racing goes.
Stop making it so complicated. It's not that hard.
Everybody was confused when I saw them on Sunday or Monday morning. They didn't know what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
And it should be simple. I hate it when people go, there's just cars going around in a circle. But, that's what they were doing. Make it easy for the people. And it'd be much more enjoyable. And I'm glad that Tony Stewart spouted off. But, I give him credit. I had a good talk with him on NASCAR weekend. We talked about a lot of stuff. And, I ain't going to say nothing what he said because it was private. But I'm glad he's getting out of it and he's going to go do something else that he wants to do. But Subject number 3, Talladega Short Track. We're running tonight, just a regular racing program. We had a barn burner last Saturday night, gentlemen.
Cool.
We had Fat Fields in the super late model. Jason Hyatt won his 8th race in a row. Whenever he's attended Talladega on a Saturday night, he has won it. And it was an absolute barn burner with, Tim Rosell and Terry Smith on his keister. And the Crate Late Model race was an absolute barn burner as well. Maybe one of the best races of the year, with Joe Nugent and Cruz Skinner virtually side by side for 20 consecutive laps. We had 8 different lead changes and 16 lead changes inside the laps. And the track was absolutely beautiful. We did some things to the track, or the track ownership did, and it turned out to be great. So we're just running tonight, the usual. Gates open at 5. Hot laps at 7. Last week we finished at 10:40, even though we had a red flag. We're running good programs. And I got to get back to work, guys, but I just wanted to touch base. Dustin, have a safe drive wherever you're going, my man. Steve,
thanks, buddy. I appreciate
it. Rock and roll, and I got to roll, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
You be careful. Check them out online at Talladega Short Track, and you can get all the information there. And here's the cool part about it. Adults, you're going to get in for cheap. It's like $10. And if you got children, what is it, 9 and under, Dustin?
I believe it's 9 and under, yes. Don't quote me, but I believe.
They get in for free. I mean, come on. This is good stuff right here. If you love racing, but all you've done is pay attention on the television to NASCAR Sprint Cup, which, again, we're racing fans. We watch this stuff too. But if that's all you've done, you're missing out. Go to a Talladega Short Track. Go to a local short track near you, because great racing is going on there.
Oh, yeah, no doubt in my mind. But as a matter of fact, I passed there this morning, and I looked down the road towards the Talladega Short Track, towards Talladega Super Speedway, and I was like, man, I can't wait to get back so I can get down there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We're going to spend a lot of Saturday nights over there.
Ready. Yeah, I'm about to say, I'm going to hop up off of here, though, because I have to get back on the road myself.
All right, you be careful, and we're going to be talking with you next week, okay?
Yeah, man, I will. I'll call in. I'm actually heading back next Saturday as well.
You're going to be on the road again during the show?
But, there's a big but.
Okay.
I won't have to press the ejectocito button on passengers. I'm using Latin right now. And, I'm getting hit at the same time.
I know you are.
But I will talk to you guys next week. You guys have a great weekend. It's great to join you here for a few minutes, and I'll talk to you next week.
Be careful. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
Talk to you guys soon.
You too. Bye-bye. On his way up to on his way up to Maryland, going through Greenville, an area I'm very familiar with, because when my grandmother was living and we would go up to see her up in Asheville, just outside Asheville, North Carolina, we would go up through Atlanta, up to Greenville, and then cut up. I know exactly where he is. It's pretty country.
I know where he is, too. That's where I had my appendix taken out.
That's right, too. Yay.
Oh, yeah.
Memories. I'm not going to say
memories.
I'm not going to say good memories, but memories. Memories.
Happy, happy, joy, joy. Just like the All-Star race.
Yeah, exactly. There's another show on the weekends that I host. In fact, it precedes this particular show on Saturday mornings and Saturday evenings. It's called the Entertainment Roundtable. And if you were listening to this weekend's Entertainment Roundtable, you might have heard about a movie being made related to NASCAR. And no, I'm not talking about Will Ferrell, who was lampooning NASCAR again, as Talladega Nights 2 will apparently begin filming later on this summer.
Shake and bake, baby.
I'm talking about a little bit more serious NASCAR-themed film getting underway. More serious take on the sport as well. It's directed by Steven Soderbergh. It's a film that is slated to star Channing Tatum, Daniel Craig, who is well known as the most recent James Bond. Adam Driver, and Seth MacFarlane, which Seth MacFarlane and Sirius don't seem to go together, but that's another point entirely. Some pre-production activity is going to be taking place this weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the film, which is set to depict a heist at Charlotte Motor Speedway on a race weekend. It's slated to be titled Logan Lucky. No release date has been revealed, but should hit theaters fall of 2017. In initially hearing about this, I quickly thought of his take on Ocean's 11, because if you think about it, Ocean's 11, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, on and on and on and on and on, was a heist of a Vegas casino taking place during a boxing match. So there's similarities there, which is not a bad thing, because I thought Ocean's 11, the remake, was actually quite good.
I did too.
So I'll be interested to see what happens here. I've said this before, and I'm not going to try and rehash the Entertainment Roundtable, but I'm not the biggest fan of Channing Tatum.
No, me either. However, I'm wondering if if it's going to include lots of NASCAR footage.
That's the question. And that's what I'm thinking. The pre-production activities that they're going to be doing, they're going to be filming the racing to be able to throw that in there. Because NASCAR is all in with these guys on it. So you're at least going to be seeing the actual cars as opposed to some of the other NASCAR movies where maybe you didn't actually see the actual cars. Maybe they made them up.
Days of Thunder.
For example. The host of this weekend's Indy 500 and later on this summer the Brickyard 400, they've announced the return of a Christmas event that is entitled Lights at the Brickyard. Attendees to the event will experience 40 scenes made up of Christmas lights that are set to bring viewers in their own cars out on to the famed racing service, that 2.5-mile-long rectangular course. You'll get to run about 1.7 miles of it, and that will include taking your car over the famed Yard of Bricks start-finish line.
Sweet.
In addition to that, other attractions that will allow visitors to get out of their cars and roam around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So plenty to do. Schedule subject to change, but it is expected to run from November 18th through December 31st of this year. Early bird tickets are on sale right now through IMS.com. They're $20 per car. Prices are expected to go up the closer to event date. Speaking of IndyCar, last week we mentioned that the man who was waving the green flag for this year's milestone Indy 500 is going to be actor Chris Pine, who is not, however, the race's grand marshal. It's an honor that goes to veteran actress Florence Henderson, likely best known for her role as Mrs. Brady on the kitschy early 1970s show The Brady Bunch. In her role, she's going to be greeting racers and dignitaries in the pre-race introductions. She's going to ride in the parade car before the green flag. She'll deliver the famous command to fire engines. You might think to yourself, how in the world did Florence Henderson, of all people, get this? Florence Henderson is an Indiana native, and she does a lot of work for some of the charities in and around native Indiana. So the native Indianian? Native from India?
Somebody from Indiana.
Yeah, okay. She also is pretty well known most years for singing either God Bless America or The America the Beautiful, but she won't be doing that this year with her new duties. As for the man leading the 33-car field to that green flag, you want to talk about a wild year for one James Hinchcliffe. 53 weeks ago, he wasn't even sure he was going to be living. Hinchcliffe, in a practice run leading up to race day for the Indy 500 in 2015, crashed. He hit the outside wall hard enough for his car to break apart into many pieces. One of those pieces actually pierced his left leg. The condition, were it not for the fast action of the Speedway medical team, could have actually caused him to bleed out, but the wound was stabilized at the track and he was able to be taken to a local hospital for surgery. 6 days later, he was awake, alert, and watching the Indy 500 from his hospital bed.
And saying, ouch.
Uh-huh. He was out of the car for the remainder of the 2015 season. And it also, congratulations to James Hinchcliffe for that. And in addition to that, he breaks a string of 6 straight years where a Penske driver had claimed the pole. First time in 31 races that a Honda-powered entry has claimed the pole position. So a lot of new things here for James Hinchcliffe as he claims the pole here. Rest of your front row, in addition to Hinchcliffe, in the middle is Joseph Newgarden and Ryan Hunter-Reay on the outside. Remember, this is the one race in the series that at least that we cover, that when they do their starts, they go 3 wide instead of 2 wide. Pretty cool stuff. One more note on Sunday's big event. All the seats have been sold out for the 100th running of the event. It's nice to know that people have a sense of history here. This also marks the first time that the Indy 500 has not been blacked out in its home city of Indianapolis since 1950.
Really?
Yep. They've had blackouts in effect every year since 1950, since the advent of television as we fairly well know it.
So, to recap, the seats are all sold.
All gone. Can't find one.
So, they're not going to black out, I would think, because the seats are all sold.
You'll be able to watch it on
television. Even if you wanted to go, you couldn't go, so they're going to say, hey, okay,
unless you're
go ahead
willing
and
to
watch
pay
it.
some serious scalping money.
Serious.
Yeah, because, again, this is the 100th running of the event, and therefore tickets are... Well, you get a milestone event like that, tickets, they start jumping up there. Once IndyCar gets back the crown jewel of their racing season this weekend, they look ahead to the rest of the season, and this includes a return to Road America June 26th. It was announced earlier this week that the event now has a title sponsor, and it is Kohler. Kohler, based in nearby Kohler, Wisconsin, continues and is now one of the oldest privately owned companies in the United States of America. It employs more than 30,000 people around the world. A global manufacturer, has more than 48 locations worldwide. They make kitchen and bath products, engines and power systems, furniture, cabinetry, and more. The last time IndyCar raced in Road America, 2007, 10 of the drivers racing now were racing back then, so they might have an advantage. But I don't know. It's been a long time, and Road America's changed a little bit. I don't think it's that big of an advantage myself. Even though this is supposed to be the biggest weekend for the Verizon IndyCar Series, other business still goes on. And ESPN.com motorsports writer Bob Pockris reported Tuesday of this week, series officials have actually filed suit against organizers of the now defunct, before it ever got to race, Boston Grand Prix for breach of contract. The lawsuit against Boston Grand Prix LLC plus two of its executives has the suit saying that their agreement contains trade secrets, sanction and event fees, along with sensitive commercial information. Last year, IndyCar and the organizers agreed in May of 2015 they were going to put on a race using the streets of South Boston. They were slated to run that each year on Labor Day weekend through at least 2020. Then the promoters said April 29th of this year the race would not be taking place because of problems between them, the city of Boston, and the state of Massachusetts. Trust me, I know how difficult the state of Massachusetts can be. I was born there. In its place, Watkins Glen International Road Course is going to host the Labor Day weekend event, so at least they keep the schedule at its current event number. But Massachusetts is, well, they're SOL because they're idiots.
Yeah, I was reading up on this a little bit, and kudos to Verizon Indy for taking that extra step and saying, yo, refund people their money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You don't get to keep this. You didn't get to put on the race. You don't get to keep it.
Right.
You're done. Hopefully that it'll all work out in the end. And again, South Boston and people of Massachusetts, it's your loss.
And we've mentioned this before. I want to bring this up again. Verizon Indy is doing something right. They're bringing more people into the sport. NASCAR better take notice.
Yeah, I agree. They've made it a little bit even more accessible. And NASCAR is not exactly the least accessible when it comes to racing. I think that would really probably go to Formula One. But all things considered, yeah, NASCAR could learn some lessons from their other. I mean, IndyCar learned a lot of lessons from NASCAR, and what they did was they took those lessons and they went even further in allowing the fans that much more access. If you go out to Barber Motorsports Park, or you go to Indy for the Indy 500, the Indianapolis Grand Prix, which was run a couple of weeks ago, or whatever race you're going to, it is amazing how accessible and how easy it is to get access to the paddock, which is essentially the same as getting a pit pass before the race going to Talladega. They've done a fantastic job of it. Again, NASCAR could take some lessons from that little brother of theirs over at IndyCar, because if you want to keep this the fan's choice out there. And I understand that the NFL is the ratings television monster and pretty much all the games are sold out nationwide. But you know what? You still have more fans on average going to NASCAR races every single race week than go to an NFL game. And you know what? That says to me volumes out there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what NASCAR, if they actually have a brain, can learn from their racing brethren, because there's some pretty good stuff. Let me go back to the beginning here. I mentioned Florence Henderson there. She's doing Grand Marshal activities. She's given the command to start engines. You've got Chris Pine waving the green flag. Other things happening. Since Florence Henderson is not singing God Bless America, it's actually going to be the Indianapolis Children's Choir going to be doing that. A local Indiana singer by the name of Josh Kaufman, apparently was on some sort of competition show, American Idol, X Voice, it doesn't matter, performing back home again in Indiana. Again, this is the one that was so long done by Jim Nabors that it seems odd to not have Jim Nabors doing it, but the man's retired and he's in failing health, so I get it. Hopefully he does a good job. Then you got Darius Rucker, who's now a country artist, formerly of Hootie and the Blowfish.
I was going to say that name ringed a bell.
Yeah, was in rock and roll in the mid to late 1990s, and Hootie and the Blowfish has now become quite the accomplished country music singer, solo artist. He'll be doing the national anthem. Henderson giving the command to start engines. Roger Penske himself going to be driving the pace car for pre-race warm-up laps. He's going to be driving one of the brand new Chevy Camaro ZL1 high-speed, massive engine. Humongous.
Lucky him.
Yeah, no kidding. Just give me the car. And then Pine waving the green flag to get the race underway. So a lot of stuff going on at Indianapolis. If you've never watched the Indy 500, even if you don't watch the race in and of itself, watch the pre-race activities. It's just the pomp and the circumstance. And the way that they do that at Indy, the way they do it in Charlotte, leading up to the race in and of itself, all the pre-race activities, the fact that they know that it is Memorial Day weekend and they take the time to honor the men and women who have given their lives in service of this country. They take that time to honor those men and women And no doubt about it, I know I appreciate it. I know that Dustin appreciates it as a veteran himself, a man who was in the Marine Corps. John, I think I speak for you when I say that you appreciate it as well.
You do.
So tomorrow is just going to be a fun day when it comes to watching the racing from Formula One into IndyCar and into NASCAR. Great day for racing all the way around. Speaking of Formula One, that's where we'll pick things up as we get into the final quarter of the fastest hour in radio for Memorial Day right here on Superstation 101 WYDE.
You're listening to the fastest hour in radio on Superstation 101.
Let's face it, it's always been hard to kick the smoking habit until now. Don't wait to take the next step of pulling away from the pack. Experience the healthier alternative of smoking by vaping with Wild Vapors. Whether you're taking the turn or coming along in the straightaway, it's time to hit the deep brakes on cigarettes and turn into Wild Vapors. Wild Vapors is known for their signature formula for their own brands. They only use the purest vaping juice on the circuit without sucralose or diacetyl. Stop filling up your tank with the wrong fuel and swap to the healthier, cleaner solution through Wild Vapors. The crew at Wild Vapors is there to answer your questions and concerns about vaping. They're the reliable team you need as your pit crew when taking the turn towards the healthier alternative to cigarettes. They offer a full line of vaping supplies and guidance to help you quit cigarettes without falling off the track. Make sure you miss the big one by ditching the cigarettes and stop in at Wild Vapors. Find the healthier alternative to smoking. Make your next pit stop at Wild Vapors of Sylacauga today. 256-369-2569. Find them in the Sylacauga Walmart Shopping Center or their Alexander City location. Stay on track with Wild Vapors.
The only show that covers NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One. The fastest hour in radio on Superstation 101.
Hey, welcome back in. Fastest hour in radio. Man, going 2 hours. And I actually think I can cover this, John. I really do. Sweet. We're up to Formula One. We've talked about NASCAR, and we talked about all the events from last weekend. Talked about NASCAR, all three levels. We've talked IndyCar. Now we move on to Formula One. And Rio Haryanto, he was signed to drive one of the Manor Team Formula One cars before this season, based upon a sponsorship agreement that had been worked out through the driver's home government, ensuring sponsorship, supposedly. That agreement appears to be falling apart for the Indonesian native, and it's those funding problems that's led Haryanto to say that this, through the series' official website, F1Formula1.com, quote, "I have no answer for that right now. I will give my best, and of course the funds are an issue, but this is handled by my management so that I can fully concentrate on racing." Now, Manor has not commented on the situation. Manor is in a little bit better shape this year than they were last year, where they kind of came back to racing by the skin of their teeth. This year, things seem a little bit better, but there's going to come a point when, if you've quote-unquote bought your seat, as Haryanto has, that piper's going to come calling, and you're going to need to pay the piper. And here comes the question of whether he'll be able to. We do not know. Renault officials are prepared, they say, to introduce their upgraded power unit a little bit early, like this weekend in Monaco. Following successful testing the week before last in Spain, following that Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, the maker decided to go with the new setup for one of the crown jewel races in the Formula One calendar, instead of waiting as they had previously planned for the Canadian Grand Prix, which will happen in a couple of more weeks. According to Renault, the new power plant improved the driving dynamics of the engine itself, while also showing an improvement in power. They state they're going to bring as many as are ready for Monaco this weekend, with 4 cars, their own shop team, and of course the 2 Red Bull cars using Renault engines. However, Motorsport.com states that actually only 2 are going to be fully prepared for this weekend, leaving 1 each for Renault and Red Bull. It's unclear at this time which driver on either team is going to get the new engine package, leaving the other driver on said teams to work with the older generation power provider, so that ought to be an interesting little soap opera. Good luck. I don't want to be that person who has to make that decision, especially over at Red Bull, because if you stop and think about it, just a couple of weeks ago, they brought up from Toro Rosso over to Red Bull the 18-year-old kid, Max Verstappen, who then promptly goes out and wins.
Yay, Max.
But does Daniel Ricciardo get his feelings hurt over the fact that suddenly this kid has come in and lit the world on fire and he suddenly gets the new power plant? Or does Max Verstappen get his feelings hurt because Daniel got the new power plant, but hey, I'm the dude that walked in and won on his first race with you guys? Here comes the political infighting, man. I can see it. I can.
If one whines because the other got a power plant, grow up and stop being a baby.
I might say this. You know what? Daniel gets the new power plant because, hey, you won on the old one. What are you complaining about? Might be the way. That might be the way to do it. I don't know. Yeah. It's just a thought. The family of late Formula One racer Jules Bianchi has filed suit against Formula One. They're seeking to place blame for the driver's death. July of 2015, Bianchi succumbed to the injuries that he had suffered during the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix. What happened, his racer went off the slick, it was raining, track and slid up under some safety equipment that was there, cleaning up the racer of Adrian Sutil, who had crashed on the exact same corner the lap prior. Bianchi's head hit the underside of the crane that was being used to lift the car off of the track and behind a fence, and it caused massive head injuries to Bianchi. Again, he succumbed to it in July of 2015. His family filed suit against Formula One management, the FIA, the sports governing body, and the team that he was racing for, Marussia, as they were known at that time. An investigation performed by the FIA determined that there were a number of factors that led to the crash, rainy conditions, as I mentioned, Bianchi's speed, which is above what the FIA said that they felt was a safe speed for that corner, especially under cleanup conditions that they were under at the time, and, of course, the presence of said crane. Well, the lawsuit claims that Bianchi's death was entirely avoidable, stated that the family had displeasure in including their son as being even partially at fault. While money has not been detailed, if it's sought at all, the last sentence of the suit filing says this, quote, "The Bianchi family are determined that this legal process should require those involved to provide answers and to take responsibility for any failings," unquote. We'll have to see how this goes. I bet you this gets dragged out for a while. Formula One, in response to his passing, officially retired the number 17 in his memory, so no other driver can ever use that number again in competition.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah. This weekend, Haas F1 team driver Romain Grosjean going to wear a special helmet in memory of Bianchi, who was a good friend of his. It will feature the same look as Bianchi's when he raced at Monaco this weekend back in 2014, where he placed 9th. Bianchi scored, by the way, the only championship points in Manor or Marussia's history in Formula One, which goes back to 2010, for placing 9th. So the helmet that Grosjean wears will look exactly like the one that Bianchi wore 2 years ago when he did that.
That's nice. That's a nice tribute.
Yeah, it is. And this is a kid who was considered an up-and-coming driver. He was a hotshot kid because of what I just detailed at Monaco back in 2014. A lot of people felt like he was in line that Ferrari may actually be calling him up. And to go from a Manor Marussia to a Ferrari is not. And it's a big step. That's a huge step when you stop and think about it. But they thought that much of him at that point in time. So, again, things not exactly on the up and up between the family and the sport. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep you updated right here on the Fastest Hour in Radio. Another kind of cool thing, I love how the racing community comes together in times like this. This week leading up to the week leading up to the German Grand Prix, I should say, a team made up of race car drivers is going to be taking on a celebrity team headed by a German NBA player by the name of Dirk Nowitzki of the Dallas Mavericks. You may or may not be familiar with him, depending on how much of a basketball fan you are. I'm not particularly, although I know the name. The driver team is going to be headed up by a German native by the name of Sebastian Vettel. You might have heard of him. The game is going to take place the Wednesday before the German Grand Prix. All the proceeds are going to be going to 2 charities in Germany that specialize in attempting to find ways to reverse brain damage, which, of course, 7-time Formula One champion Michael Schumacher is dealing with in the wake of his own skiing accident, which happened in late December of 2014. He's continuing to rehab and recover from that at his home in Switzerland. All the proceeds going to benefit charities that deal with stuff that he's dealing with. Again, I like the way that that racing community comes together for people like this.
Yeah, it's rather cool.
It really is. Last week, we told you about plans for the latest NASCAR video game. Not to be outdone, we now have word on the latest iteration of the Formula One game. It'll come out for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and your Windows-based PC. In there, we do know you're going to get a 10-year career mode. You'll also get the introduction of the reintroduction of the safety car. Apparently, the last couple of iterations of the game eliminated it. Plus, they're going to give you what they instituted this year, what they call a virtual safety car, where you don't actually put the safety car out onto the track, but the entire track is slowed down to safety car speed. Weird. I know. It's odd. I haven't totally figured that one out either. Either way, both of which they're used in the series now. It is also, the game, been updated with the latest circuits. This includes the Baku City circuit, which is slated to be run for the first time this year. Codemasters designed the game. The principal games designer, Lee Mather, said of it, quote, F1 2016 is a massive step forward for the franchise. New career mode sits at the heart of the game. It allows gamers to create their own legend over a career that can span up to 10 seasons. More of the improvements over the previous versions will be announced in the coming weeks, and while a specific date has not been announced, the game maker says it will be available sometime in the summer of this year. So they're actually going to beat NASCAR 2017 to the shelves as well. I have not yet played one. I'm intrigued by a Formula One game.
It sounds pretty cool, but I haven't. I don't have a PS4.
That's true. I don't have a PS4 either. Actually, I'm a PS3.
I don't have a PS3 or a 2 or a 1. I do have a PC, though.
You have a Windows-based PC. That's true. Yes. You could actually play this game then.
I might have to check it out.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends upon price. We haven't heard price ranges yet. I know that last year, I want to say that it was the Formula One game that actually came in at a fairly easy price of like $20.
Wow.
So if they can do that again for this year,
I might pick that one up.
Yeah, 10-year career mode actually intrigues me, which is not something they had last year.
But if it comes in at, $75,
I'm out.
I'm going to say, hey, Steve, give me a raise.
Yeah, I'll send that one up the flagpole. We'll see how quickly that comes back down the flagpole.
I won't hold my breath.
Good idea. Just saying. Late Model Mark mentioned this when he called about 30 minutes ago, talking about some records that were set last weekend. Both Matt Hagan and Brittany Force actually set records last weekend. Some cool conditions out there in Topeka, Kansas helped make the power needed for Force to be the only driver to break into the 3.6 second elapsed time range during qualifying. She ran the 1,000 feet in 3.676 seconds in the top fuel category. That is cooking. Matt Hagan gunning his Dodge Charger funny car to an NHRA record time and speed for that division at 3.862 seconds at 335.57 miles per hour. Can you imagine in 1,000 feet going over 335 miles an hour?
I can't imagine going over 300 miles an hour, period.
Much less in 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
That's how fast these guys and girls, that's how fast these drivers are going. Show them the respect that they deserve. And this is why again, it's something we've been called upon to cover for some time now. Now that we're expanded out, we knew that we were at the 90 minutes. We started to cover it. This is the learning process. Okay. Dustin and I and John, none of the three of us are going to sit here and tell you that we know everything about NASCAR. In fact, I don't know a whole lot about NASCAR, truth be told. I'm still learning. I'm very, very early in the learning process. But what I'm learning so far, I'm extremely impressed by. I'm liking it. I'm having a pretty good time watching it.
NHRA.
Yeah,
I am. You said NASCAR.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I know more about NASCAR than I know about the NHRA. But then again, I started doing the show based on nothing but NASCAR. It's been slowly improved and expanded since then. It's hard to believe I've been doing this as long as I have.
It's a good show, and that's why.
Well, and I started this. I'll get to that in a bit. We'll go back into the history of this in a minute. We're pretty close to the end here, so let's go ahead and wrap up what we've got here. Beal Racing in the NHRA, they've signed an 8-race sponsorship deal with AutoAnything.com. AutoAnything.com is a leading online car and truck performance parts website. The team and the company were together for the final 2 races of the 2015 season, so the deal was struck this week, and they will continue the partnership on the funny car entry driven by Brandon Welch. It's a sponsorship deal officially set to begin in late June at the NHRA Nationals in Norwalk, and it will go through the remainder of the 2016 racing season. Hopefully that means that maybe Beal Racing can go from a part-time entry to a full-time entry. Sad news came down earlier this week when it was learned drag racing legend Shirley Muldowney is set to undergo surgery due to lung cancer. 3-time Top Fuel champion had been diagnosed with cancer in her lung, underwent surgery Wednesday in Charlotte, North Carolina. They removed her right lung entirely. Muldowney, who is now 75, used the time with the media to caution people, saying, quote, "I urge everyone to keep up with their health and get chest x-rays as often as possible to make sure that they're okay." The thoughts and prayers of all of us here at the Fastest Hour in Radio go with her. But with that said, an update came down Thursday morning. The surgery went well. Muldowney was awake and alert on Thursday, talking with friends and family members only 24 hours after that surgery was performed. The surgery reportedly took about 4 hours, performed by doctors at Charlotte's Novant Health Presbyterian Medical Center, who said that the surgery went so smoothly that in order to remove her lungs, they actually did not have to break or crack any ribs to do it. Recovery time is estimated to be about 8 to 10 weeks. Shirley Muldowney says that once she's out, she's going to go back and work on her charities that she's been dealing with regarding to kids and cancer, both respectively and separately. So ultimate amount of respect for her on that. A little bit of a heads up if you're a movie person. Again, I'm not trying to make this the entertainment roundtable by any means, but we talked about Talladega Nights 2. The second one's set to start filming a little bit later on this summer. You've got the heist movie that we talked about, Channing Tatum, Daniel Craig, and others, directed by Steven Soderbergh, called Logan Lucky, which should start filming in seriousness a little bit later on this summer as well. A little bit more serious take on NASCAR. If you want to know a little bit about Shirley Muldowney, don't think that this is going to be the most serious take on her life, but it'll at least give you a little bit of an idea. If you remember Bonnie Bedelia, probably better known as playing the wife of John McClane out of the movie Die Hard, go look up a movie called Heart Like a Wheel. She, Jeff Bridges, probably would recognize a couple of other names from either the late 70s or early 80s, and it's all about Shirley Muldowney and her racing career. It's actually a pretty good film. It's not great by any means, but at least give you a bit of an idea.
Her name rings a bell with me.
Probably.
I may have seen that movie.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good film. So go and check that out. God, there are so many other films that are out there that are quite frankly very underrated. You mentioned Days of Thunder, which, you know, folks, that's Top Gun in NASCAR, okay? That's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it was, yes.
Okay, they wanted to capitalize on the popularity of Tom Cruise, and they did, and the movie was a hit. I went to go see it. Yeah, it's very Hollywooded up.
Yeah, but I will say this. Oh, man, his name just popped right on my head.
Crew Chief?
Yes.
Robert Duvall?
That's him. He made that movie.
His name wasn't Harry Hyde in the movie. Was it Harry Hyde or Harry Hogg?
Hyde.
Yeah, I'm getting the two of them confused because here's the thing. This is a movie that is fairly loosely based upon the beginnings of Richard Childress Racing. I mean, even going so far as to talk about City Chevrolet, which was Rick Hendrick's original car dealership.
True.
But here's it's not a great movie. It's kind of fun. It's somewhat enjoyable, but don't take it all that seriously. Okay, there are better NASCAR movies that are out there, quite frankly. And no, I'm not talking about Stroker Ace either. You remember Stroker Ace? You ever see the Burt Reynolds?
Yes.
Lonnie Anderson?
Yes, I do.
No, that's
and no,
I'm not talking about that. You actually want to see a good one, and this one may be a little bit hard to find. You got to go back into the 1970s to get it. Richard Pryor portraying Wendell Scott in a movie called Grease Lightning.
That was a good movie.
Yeah, that's actually a very good movie, and it goes pretty well into his life and times, and of course the one win that an African-American driver has had at what we now call the Cup Series level. Very good film. Oh, gosh, what was the movie that, speaking of Jeff Bridges, appeared in? Last American Hero, I think is what the movie was called. And while they didn't get the rights to use all the names, it's effectively based upon a magazine article done about Junior Johnson. And Jeff Bridges plays a guy by the name of Junior Jackson. Hey. Nice change. But not bad. That one's not bad. I'm trying to think of other racing films right offhand. But, you know, some of the older ones are a little bit better. Let's face it, Will Ferrell, he went into the movie company that put out Talladega Nights, and they sold the movie based upon one sentence. And the one sentence was literally, Will Ferrell does NASCAR. Okay, we'll do it. And hence you got Talladega Nights and upcoming Talladega Nights 2. I was trying to think. Rush is a fantastic movie when it comes to Formula One. Ron Howard did a great job on that.
That was good, yes.
Oh, gosh. James Garner did a racing way, way back. It might have been called Grand Prix because Steve McQueen did Le Mans. And I want to say James Garner did Grand Prix. Grand Prix is a late 60s, early 70s movie about Formula One racing. And we haven't had too many American drivers in Formula One, obviously, but he portrays an American driver who comes in and does that. So if you're looking for, and I understand that, this is a weekend where we want to remember the men and women who gave their lives in the call of duty here. Yeah, 1966, actually, Grand Prix. James Garner, Eva Marie Saint. Good grief. Names that I can't pronounce. How about that? But anyway, not a bad movie. I've seen it. It's actually pretty good. It kind of overemphasizes the whole crash, blow up, explosion kind of thing when it comes to a couple of wrecks, but it's not a bad film. It's kind of strange. The older movies took things a little bit more seriously, save Days of Thunder and Stroker Race. So, but if you're looking for that and you're not wanting to do a whole lot of war movies this weekend, maybe you find some racing movies, kind of give you a little bit of the history of it. And those are just a few, not by any stretch a complete list at all, but there's a good number of them that are out there.
What's your take on the Sly Stallone driven?
The racing action is not bad when they just spend the time with the actual racing. It's not as easy to pass as they made it seem, because Sylvester Stallone plays a veteran on a particular team with, I want to say, a rookie or a very, very young driver. And they end up finding themselves at the back of the field at some point in time during an IndyCar race, and they just talk about working together to pass and work their way up through the field. It's not that easy to pass. You can't just decide, okay, now we're going to work together and we're just going to pick off these cars one by one. No, it doesn't work that way. That's
more like NASCAR, isn't it?
I've never seen teammates be able to do that either.
To a point.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, yeah, I would expect it more out of NASCAR than IndyCar. But some of the racing action's pretty good. I think if you're looking for a really, truly realistic way of looking at racing, you got to watch Rush. Rush probably is the best one because Ron Howard did a fantastic job of actually taking race footage from that 1976 season and melding it in to fill in some of the blanks, because there are points in time where the cameras, they didn't use anywhere near as many cameras back in the mid-1970s as they do now. So there were parts of the courses that you actually couldn't see. And Ron Howard uses dramatic effect to fill in those blanks, so to speak, and show how a pass was made where the original Formula One cameras didn't catch it. The two cars go in behind trees, and when they come out, the guy who was in second is now in first. Well, he can do that, and he melded it in very nicely, and you get a much better idea of how it looks. I think probably the most realistic version of racing on screen that I have seen would be out of the movie Rush. So if you get the chance to go see, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth going to see or checking out. And I got it on DVD, and I think it's a great movie, and I love watching it.
There you go.
All right. And then I think about this show. And I've been working here. Michael Hart and I have talked about this recently. We've been reunited in the afternoons, in case you have missed all the big shakeup here because of quitters. And when we had the opportunity to come back together, we realized that we've been here for 7 years. And on and off, he and I have been together on and off 7 years now, doing shows here. And I have had the chance to do a couple of different weekend shows, and the first one that I did was a little hour-long show that followed Jim Moore's Shop Talk called Whatever with Steve West.
I remember
and
that.
When I did that, I broke it up. I spent about 30 minutes talking about issues of the weekend and whatever kind of caught my fancy, and then I'd spend about 15 minutes talking about NASCAR, doing a very short version of the fastest hour in radio. It was the fastest 15 minutes in radio, if you want to. And then Ryan, who we know so well now from the Entertainment Roundtable, would come on and we'd talk movies and TV for a short period of time. And then that just kind of started expanding out.
Snowball.
Yeah. And when I got 7 to 9 p.m. time slot, 2011, I think, just started thinking about opportunities and what I could do that would be a little bit different from 7 to 9 p.m. instead of talking about the same old politics and rehashing the same stuff that we've been talking about day after day after day after day and hour after hour. And talked to Ryan. Ryan said he was good for doing an hour-long version of the Entertainment Roundtable, which we're still doing. And then I met Dustin, and he and I got on the phone one time and started talking fastest hour, and he came down here and saw Talladega and said, okay, that's it. And he moved down here, and boom, fastest hour in radio suddenly becomes a regular version or a regular show on the weekends. from weekdays to weekends, and now we're expanded out to 90 minutes. And it's just amazing to watch how things change over the course of time. But yeah, I've been doing this show now for at least 5 years. 5, maybe 6, in some way, shape, or form. And despite all the changes, it's still fun for me.
That's what it's all about, baby.
Exactly.
Having fun.
Well, and I need to give a shout out here, because the initial idea behind the format as I was doing it was supposed to be quick hitting. And when I spent a little bit of time up in the Mid-Atlantic area, I've told, you know this, you and I met when I moved up to the Mid-Atlantic area in 1987, and you and I met in 1988 for the first time, and you and I have been longtime friends, and that's why I pretty much just call you my brother from another mother, because that's what we've become over
30-plus years.
Holy crap, 30 years. And when I moved over for a year and a half to a radio station in Kaiser, West Virginia. Good luck finding that on a map, by the way. Go to Maryland, find Cumberland, way out in the western part of Maryland, and then I can't remember what the name of the road is, but pretty much go due south from Cumberland, Maryland for about 20 miles. You come across Kaiser, West Virginia. Nobody knows where Kaiser, West Virginia is. The fact that you can actually find it on the map is somewhat impressive, and I think the only reason you can is because it's the county seat of Mineral County. Otherwise, it wouldn't show up on a map. It's small. But it was a fun place to be for a year and a half, and I met one person by the name of Gary Howell. Gary Howell, who we have had on this radio station a couple of times, once with Michael Hart, once with Scott Beeson during Yellowhammer Radio, because he's now in the West Virginia state legislature as well. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about their gun legislation, and we've talked about how racing things happen, when specifically Tony Stewart and Kevin Ward had their incident at Canandaigua Motorsports Park in 2015. We talked about that with him as well. And Gary Howell and I kind of cooked this idea up of a very quick-hitting, what we called the Fast Track Motorsports Report. It was a 2.5-minute long
I remember that
racing show, and basically what we did was we gave 1 or 2 sentences about a story, and we moved on. It was literally quick-hitting for 2.5 minutes, and we tried to cover as much stuff as we could. And we actually separated it out for the home. We syndicated it out to about 13 different radio stations. And what we did was we took the highlights and we put them all into that and sent those out to the radio stations. But at the home station, which was WQZK-FM in Kaiser, West Virginia, we actually had 3 versions of it. Monday, we would do a dirt track version. I want to say Wednesday, we did the asphalt version. And it covered everything. I mean, we were doing World of Outlaws and, Hooters Pro Late Models and stuff like that. And we were covering the NHRA. And, again, it was dipping your toe in the waters, but you weren't getting very deep into it. And then we just did a preview of this coming weekend of where all the racing was going to be that weekend. So we had 3 versions on the home thing. And when I thought about doing something regarding racing, which has been a passion of mine for a long time, I just kind of went to that format of the Fast Track Motorsports Report and just expanded on it. It's why we don't go on some stories. We'll go really in depth, but for other stories, we'll just leave it at a paragraph and move along. But hopefully it gives you a basic overview of what's going on out there. I'm not trying to be the next Eli Gold. We played NASCAR Live here on this radio station before in the past. NASCAR Live with Eli Gold it's a great product in and of itself. It goes a little bit into the news of the day, but for the most part, what you're going to get is you're going to get news and interviews, and a lot of interviews with current drivers, maybe the previous week's winner, maybe a roundtable with other Motor Racing Network personalities in there. But they're basically just a talk show. They're going to take and get really, really deep into a particular topic. And here's the thing. It is just about 100% about NASCAR. Motor Racing Network does cover a little bit of the Tudor United Sports Car Series, so occasionally you might get an interview with one of the drivers there, but for the most part, it's all NASCAR. What's going to separate us out is the fact that not only do we cover NASCAR, all 3 of the top levels, we're going to give you IndyCar, we're going to give you Formula One, now we're going to give you NHRA, and yeah, we'll play around with the electric car series from time to time.
And we also cover Talladega short track, the dirt tracks,
exactly,
as well.
And we're seeing that more and more, and we appreciate so much the people like Late Model Mark and all the others at the speedways in and around Alabama. If you want to be a part of it at any point in time, please do. Phone lines are always open to any of the short tracks. You can call in, let us know about your activities for that weekend. and where people can find out all the information. We love it because we want to highlight that, because you want to talk about the stars of tomorrow, the stars of a few years from now. They're coming from the Talladega short tracks, the Pinton Speedways, the Huntsville Speedways, the Montgomery Motor Speedways. That's where they're going to come from. So go on out there and check it out. And in the meantime, take the time this weekend. Remember the men and women who, from all the way back to the Revolutionary War, gave their lives in the service of this country. It is Memorial Day weekend. Remember them. Remember them well.